You ever wonder what your personality says about you and how you interact with your environment? Well, join me, Marissa, each week as we dive deep into the Enneagrams and its 9 different personality types. So, let's get personal. Hello, I'm Marissa, and welcome to Let's Get Personal, where we just talk about the different Enneagram types each week. This week we're going to talk about type 7s. So one of my really close friends, he's a type 7, and he's the person who I've been literally talking to each week, and he's been helping me learn about each type and, write stuff and figure more out. So this is a fun type because, I got to talk to him about his type, and he talked to me for hours because type 7s also very much like to talk about themselves. That's a big type 7 characteristic. But it's fun because Enneagrams is the thing that brought our friendship together, because I said once, I was like, oh yeah, I know what they are. I enjoy them. And he's like, no one else I know knows about them. So we talked, and that's how we became friends. Fun facts. So type 7s are the enthusiasts, but they can also go as the adventurer. They're type 7s, they're busy. They're variety type seeking. They're also seeking type. They're spontaneous. So they can be hesitant, acquisitive, and they can sometimes be a little scattered. The things about type 7, so the basic fear of a type 7 is they don't want to be deprived or in pain. But their basic desire is to be satisfied and content to have their needs fulfilled. Type 7s are the people who live their lives without trying to fear of missing out. They don't want to miss out on anything. They're the people who will come along with you, but not in a bad way, like a fear of missing out. They just like to get experiences, and they like to gain stories. That's the biggest thing about type 7 is they like stories. They're, as you would call, the party people, not in a way that they necessarily have to be the party people, but they just like to be sociable in a way. They like to have those personal connections with people. Yeah, they just like to. I don't know if she's a type 7, because I was talking yesterday with my friend more, and I was like, the biggest thing about type 7 is they will tell you, their speaking style is personal stories. That's a really good way how to pick up a type 7, is if you will say something and they will explain something, but in a personal story way. It can either be very entertaining or it can be simply self-absorbed. So my friends will tend to. My friend, it's a thing we all know. If you say something and then he goes, oh my gosh, I have a story about this, it will take him 10 minutes to tell a 2-second story, because he'll go into all the details and he'll explain it. And it's not even just to his close friends. He'll tell personal stories to random people that we meet. He'll meet them, and 5 minutes later they'll be talking about their life, but by ways of saying stories about him. Also, they share a lot of information that you don't always need to know. Also, sometimes with the stories, sometimes they're really entertaining, because yesterday I got some very funny stories out of my friends. But sometimes you'll be talking about a carousel, and then they'll start talking about this carousel they went on when they were 5 years old, and then the fair where they dropped their cotton candy, and you're sitting there, you're this has nothing to do with it. You just want to talk about yourself, which is not a bad thing. But sometimes they go into that little they want to talk about themselves. They also fear being incomplete. They fear as though if they're not doing something at that moment, they're incomplete. They are very scatterbrained in a way, where they are constantly jumping from one project to another, because when they lose interest in something, they want something else to preoccupy them with. If they're unhealthy, which is not unhealthy, but if they're emotions are kind of down, they tend to go to like to gluttony, and not in a way of food, but just like with things. So if they're really into something, they will go into it. Need it be school, books, because if a 7 gets in their reading phase, you're not getting them out of their book reading phase for a while. They will be there, and you cannot get them out. That's a thing. They're the extroverts. So out of all of the types, type 7s, most of them are extroverts. Some of them can be introverts, but it's very hard to have an introverted 7. Because they're also very optimistic and they're versatile. As I say, they constantly seek new and exciting experiences, but they can be exhausted by staying on the go. They always have to be going. If they are not doing anything, they get stressed and they feel useless and they feel like they're not complete at that moment. They tend to take their like stress. So if they're stressed about something, they will hide it by putting everything into something else. So they'll like push it off. So like if they're stressed about a homework assignment, they'll push it off, and then they'll distract them by like reading a book or talking to their friends when they should be doing their homework, but they don't do it because it stresses them out. They also have problems with impatience and impulsiveness. A big thing about 7s is that 7s actually will, at times, what was my note that I wrote about it? I wrote a note about this. Another thing about 7s is they will cut you off when you speak. Not in a bad way. Not like a cut you off, but if you're speaking to like a 7, sometimes their brains go really fast, so they will try to finish your sentences. And oftentimes it will come across, oftentimes they're not listening fully to what someone has to say. So you'll pause or you'll be unsure of how to say a word, and they'll like come in and try to finish your sentence for you, but you're not, that's not what you're saying, or that's not where you were going. But in their brains, that's where you were going because they're very fast. And I saw that happen yesterday also. I have a friend who's 7. She caught herself. She's like, I did it. I did the thing where I finished your sentence for you. I'm like, no, that's okay. But that's just something that very type 7. And their growth is line is a 5 and their stress line's a 1. We'll go on that one too. Their key motivations is they want to maintain their freedom and happiness, to avoid missing out on worthwhile experiences, to keep themselves excited and occupied, to avoid discharge pain. So if they are occupied, they won't be able to think about like something that's stressing them out. Or if they're in pain, they won't be able to think about it. Anything that gives them that anxiety or, something that they can't control, they will do something else to pretend it doesn't exist. Sometimes they also, they are the entertaining people. They are the people that if you are bored or if you just want to talk to, they are absolutely the best people to talk to. Because they will always have things to say. It might not make any sense. You might be confused. You might zone out. As I tell you, personal storytelling, 7s tend to go off and say the weirdest stuff. One time, I was talking to my friend, and he said something about how this lady at a restaurant made fun of his shirt because it wasn't really a kid's shirt, but it was like kind of a kid's shirt. And I was like, okay, why did she make fun of your shirt? And so that's all I needed to know the answer for. But he proceeds to tell me the whole story about his day and how they went to the, like him and friend went to the movie theater and how they went to this movie, but they didn't actually have tickets for this movie and they snuck into this movie. And I was like, I just wanted to know why she made fun of your shirt. Like, yeah, like they're very enjoying stories. Listen to them. Appreciate them. That's the biggest thing about type 7s is appreciate their stories. Appreciate what they're saying to you. Because that's just how they like show emotions. They're also not really good at showing emotions. Not emotionally insensitive, but they don't know how to react. So if you're feeling sad, they'll hug you, but they won't recuperate these feelings. They don't necessarily know how to help you through it by like showing you that sadness back. That's not something they know how to do. Yeah, their weakest spot is emotions. They the heart of all the numbers, it's the hardest for them to incorporate emotions into their lives. They tend to not pretend emotions don't exist, but not showcase them. Not because they're weak, just because they don't know how to. They don't know how to embrace their emotions and, express. That's something that's really big, is the lack of emotional expression. Commitment. Type 7s are afraid of commitment. Like, that's just the thing. Because they view it as tying them down. And type 7s like to be, they're adventurers. They like to have all these experiences. So in their brains, if they commit to anybody, not even relationship-wise, like friend-wise or family-wise, also, like if they commit to a group of friends, they also feel like that is tying them down and they're not going to be able to go experience it or like have a bunch of different things that like they're not going to be able to do all these things because they have something that's preventing them, which isn't true. It's not true. They have to come to terms with themselves that like that's not a thing. Like you're not gonna like, if someone's tying you down, it might not be correct, right, for you. Because of my friends also, what she would do is she would jump in friend groups. She would have a friend group for like 3 years and then drop them and find a new friend group because she felt like it was preventing her from, going on, or she was getting too emotionally attached. And so she would leave them. And so she's like, I'm not going to leave. I was like, you're not leaving our friend group. You're a really good friend. We're not going to let you leave. So not only do they do it in relationships, they do that in friend groups. They will feel like they're getting tied down, and then they'll just kind of leave. In relationships, type 7s tend to avoid asking people out in fear of it will not work out in the end. As they don't, not that they don't feel like it work out, they're not necessarily always willing to put in the work. They know it's a lot of work. And they're not always necessarily ready to put it in, or, they also don't want to prevent themselves from being able to do the things they want to do. They also have addictive personalities, obsessions, not just, as I said before, gluttony, not just with like, food and stuff, or like, but obsessions, anything. If they become obsessed with something, they will. I'm going to throw my other friend on the bus again. She was telling me how when she would find she would make best friends, she would kind of become obsessed with them. Not in a weird way, but like you're my best friend, we should do everything together kind of way. So they can also become obsessed with people. And their obsessions don't stay that long. They'll keep it for like a couple years and then they'll drop, or like it will come in like sporadic little times, but then that's all they do. And they will strive to be really, really like the best in it. We have me and my friends, and we have this little character collecting game that we do, where we like collect all these like characters from like shows and movies and TV and stuff. And when my friend's a type 7 is kind of obsessed with it. We've all kind of died down, but she's like, no, I will have the most characters. I will keep them all. I will get everyone I want. And we're all like, okay. And that's the obsession thing. They are also quick to come up with new ideas. If something doesn't go right, so in a way where if a plan falls through, or like something isn't gonna work out in the end, like say you make plans and then you can't come, type 7 will be the one who's like, okay, who else can come? How can we still make this work? Let's do this really fast and quick and figure it out. Last minute. They are also very last minute planners. Don't really go to a type 7 if you want something planned in advance. They're the spontaneous people. They'll be like the day before. My friend did this once. He texted me. He said, "Hi, we have 14 people for dinner." And I said, "Sir, I needed to know this before so I could call restaurants and ask them if we could do, like, get a table for 14 people outside." And he's like, "Oh." I was like, "This is less than 24 hours in advance. It's not going to work." I mean, we eventually figured out we went to a park. If you have a big group, go to parks. It's fun. Like, get food somewhere. Take it all to parks. Everyone can choose what they want. But they're the people who won't, like, be like, "Oh, yeah." Also, they're not, I'd say, big picture kind of people. They're like, "Okay, me. How does this work for me?" But then other people are like, "Okay, how does this work for all of us?" But they'll, like, call you the day before and be like, "Yeah, can you plan this?" And you're like, "No, this needed to be figured out, like, a week ago." But that's the thing about 7s. They're spontaneous and they don't always follow the rules about anything, because they like to be the fun-loving person. So if people look at them and they're like, "Oh my gosh, they're so strict," or like, "Oh my gosh, they always do this," or they always follow the rules, like, they don't necessarily want that. They want everyone to look at them and be like, "Oh my gosh, they're so much fun. They're hanging out with everybody." Type 7s they're not sociable necessarily. They're sociable people. Yeah, they're social people. They just don't crave that social interaction necessarily, but they crave just the fact that they can talk to people and make other, like, connections. My friend will talk to everybody. He will make friends with someone in the grocery store. It doesn't matter where he goes. He'll make a friend. But then he also tells personal stories because he likes to talk about himself. 7s, they like to talk about themselves. That's their biggest thing. They say, "Let's talk about myself. It's fun." So when they're talking about, like, not recuperating emotions, you could call them emotionally dull, not in a bad way. Like, they don't also know how to they don't know how to showcase emotions. So if they're sad, it's not always easy to figure out if they're sad or not. They'll repress it. They'll not showcase it. They'll also, biggest thing about them, they'll rationalize things. If they did something wrong, they will not take the blame for it. They will rationalize it. They will, like, "But this happened. But this happened." So if, like, they don't get schoolwork done, they'll be like, "But that's not it." Like, but it's fine because, like, if they're supposed to do something, but I have until, like, tomorrow. It's fine. Or if something's not right, but it's not my fault. It's not necessarily me. Like, if they did something wrong, they will rationalize it. And they had this full conversation yesterday with one of my friends again. I'm going to keep throwing him under the bus, but it's a thing. He said he accidentally became, he called the other man in a relationship once. And he said, "But I didn't know. She told me they were on a break." And I was like, "You can't rationalize this. It happened." He's like, "Yes, but it wasn't my fault." And we're like, but it was. And so he just kept rationalizing it. They will. Like, sometimes they make you believe that it wasn't their fault, but it's okay. Like, in the quote, his quote yesterday was, "It wasn't an affair. It was a mistake." I went, "It was an affair, bud. If he watches this, yes, I'm sorry, but yes, you know who you are." They're also not organized people. They are very messy. They are confused. And they need planners. They really need somebody there to tell them what they need to do, or they will not get it done. Type 7s, Or people, if they're like, oh yeah, I have a paper due tomorrow or like in a week, tell them every day. Be like, hey, how you doing with that paper? Is it getting done? Because they won't do it. They will not get it done. So for like people and characters who are type 7s, Fergie is a type 7. Miley Cyrus is also type 7. Brad Pitt. Amelia Earhart is also a type 7. Peter Pan and Fred and George Weasley from Harry Potter. They're both type 7s. And then Iron Man. So Iron Man goes a lot around. People don't know if he's a type 7 or he's a type 3. The biggest... That's like a really big divide is everyone's like, oh yeah, he's a type 3 wing 4. And I was like, I don't really see that. I see him as a type 7 because he also reminds me of my friend a lot. Because, you know, like Iron Man, so I categorize Iron Man in the type 7 category as a type 7 personality. But he's, you know, that big party person. That's what he really liked. And like, you know, beforehand, like he was the life of the party. But he also has these obsessions, which, you know, type 7s are obsessed with things. Like he wanted to fix the issues that he, like, happened in his family, or, you know, becoming Iron Man. Just becoming Iron Man was an obsession. Just that Iron Man suit. He also has issues that he doesn't talk about because he doesn't really express emotions, which, you know, type 7s don't express emotions. Tony Stark was not good at expressing emotions. Ever. He also had these things he avoided, like internally and externally, like Pepper. He would externally avoid Pepper, like he wouldn't get in a relationship with Pepper because he was afraid it would tie him down or afraid he would screw it up or something would go wrong, and he didn't want that to happen. Eventually, you know, happened, but type 7s will avoid relationships. And then he had PTSD, and he would avoid it, you know, pretend it didn't exist, because it's an emotion he couldn't control. Can't control. That's the thing. And then he would gain those new obsessions, like with the Avengers. You know, he kind of became not obsessed with the Avengers, but kind of obsessed with the Avengers. Because, like, you know, he made his tower into the Avengers tower, and then, you know, they would switch little obsessions and about the different things that happened. That's why I believe Tony Stark's a 7. Some people still think he's a 3, but I'm not that sure about that. Yeah. Let's see. Type 7s are also always on the go. They will constantly have a project or something going on in their lives. That's another thing. Yeah. They have a wide range of interests. So type 7s can also get along with almost everybody because they have so many different things to talk about and they have so many interests, and they can find somebody who they have nothing really in. Like, you would think like, oh, you have nothing in common with this person, but they'll find that one thing they have in common with and they'll go with it. They will talk about it with that one person even though they don't know a lot about it, but they'll still be like, oh yes, let's talk about bugs. I don't know. Bugs came to thing. They are upbeat and optimistic. They are the glass half full people. They are the very optimistic people of the group. Where other people, like type 6s, are look on the worst case scenario. People type 7s are like the no, it's all gonna be fine. It's all gonna be good. Which is interesting that they're right next to each other, and people are 7-wing 6s because, you know, they're kind of not the opposites, but they're kind of very different. Where like a 7-wing 6 is more gonna be like, okay, I'm spontaneous and fun, but what can go wrong? Like, what's gonna happen if I, like, let's do it? But that's a 7-wing 6, and that's why they kind of work together. But it's very interesting when 7-wing 8s are like, let's just do it and not care what happens. That's a 7-wing 8. Let's see both. Good job. They're the well-liked and popular people. So they tend to have lots of friends. And they also tend to have a couple of different friend groups because they'll hop around their friend group when they feel bored with one friend group. They'll tend to hop around. Or, like, as I said, my friend would, like, drop her friend groups. The best way also to not have, like, if you don't want to drop a friend group, if you're a 7, it would be to have multiple different friend groups. Like, you have your one that's like, okay, these are my really, really good friends. But then have the other groups that you can kind of, like, hop around to, so you don't get bored with anybody and feel the need to drop all your friends and find a new friend group. Because that's not fun and no one wants to do that. Some really good jobs for type 7s would be like a fitness instructor, event planners. I mean, they're not good at planning events, but they will plan your event they tell you, if you're like, oh yeah, you have to have this done. This is your job as the event planner. They'll come up with good ideas because it's quick paced. Event planning is like a quick paced job and it will keep their attention spans. Type 7s also don't have the longest attention spans. I guess you could say type 7s, like, they don't always, but they kind of fit into that ADHD category. Not saying that they have ADHD, but, like, I have ADHD, so I can tell you that not all 7s have ADHD, but they kind of have that little bits of, like, traits of someone with, like, ADD, where they're, like, their attention span's very kind of short, and they go to something for a little bit of time, and then they'll switch to something else. Yeah. Like, because type 7s, like for event planning, type 7s love a challenge until they get bored with it. So event planning is, also client face, because type 7s like to talk to people. So event planner would be a very good job for type 7. A flight attendant. Flight attendant is also any jobs that you really get a lot of social interactions with people. Flight attendant's good because you're also always meeting new people. So you would be like talking to somebody and then the next time you'd be like flying out of somewhere else. And so they get all these new experiences that type 7s really, really thrive for. A life coach. Oh, type 7s are very good at being life coaches. I think that, type 7s could be a very good life coach. I think one of my friends could be a very good one where they talk about their life experiences and how they did stuff and how you can help yourself. This has someone's queers to avoid. If you're a type 7, jobs to avoid, it would be like an accountant. Don't do accountants because you're doing the same thing over and over again. A doctor, because that would be a same kind of schedule. Unless you're like one that's in the hospital and you're doing like ER stuff where you're like, don't know what's happening today. If you know what's happening every single day, constantly, that's not a good job for a type, like wouldn't be a good job for type 7 because they like new experiences every single time. That's some fun things. Okay, so thank you for joining in. I actually will not be back until like August, so we're gonna have to do those in August when I come back for the other types. But so thank you so much for watching and have a good day. You ever wonder what your personality says about you and how you interact with your environment? Well, join me, Marissa, each week as we dive deep into the Enneagrams and its 9 different personality types. So, let's get personal.